Good morning everyone, Jacques from Dapper Shaves. Another video this morning. This one more a follow-up on the video I did around whetstones and considerations about what you should be getting. So on the back of that, I want to talk a bit more about some of the stones I have. So it's a bit of a show and tell, talk about the characteristics, why I like them, and then get into some of the other gear I also have. The other thing I want to do is just clear up a couple of terms that's still not clearly understood always, and that's lapping and the difference to dressing. So I think I'm going to start with stone maintenance, and then we are going to cover ways of how to improve the cutting ability of your stone, making it finer but also cutting it quicker. So the mediums we're going to use on stones. Want to talk about slurry, show you guys the slurry, the differences in how they work, type of strokes you can use, how we use them, what type of pressures and the considerations behind them, checkpoints when honing, and then we'll get into a bit of a show and tell. I've got a little digital camera we're going to clip here on, and then have a look at some stuff up close, some of the stones. So that's also going to happen. Let this focus again and zoom back in. Okay. We are going to start with stone maintenance. So a stone needs to be maintained flat unless you want to hone on convex hones, and that's not a discussion here. This is a COTICULE. I use a diamond plate, currently a worn 325 DMT diamond plate. So you put the stone on and you flatten it. Okay, you can also use sandpaper on a known flat surface. We've talked about this. So when I use a coarse stone like this, I lap the stone flat. So if this stone is coarse, then the finish on the stone's also gonna be coarse. Okay, so you might not want that. So we've lapped the stone and we've chamfered the edges, so there's no places for the blade to hiccup on. So that's lapping. Now, you might want to change the surfer a whole lot finer depending on your honing needs, and that is dressing. That's how you dress the stone to do the activity. So you've dressed, you lap coarse, now you want to make it a whole lot finer. So now you take it to 1,000 grit or 2,000 grit sandpaper or plate or whatever you have, just briefly to smooth it out. And now the stone is dressed to be used. A question I get specifically on the COTICULE, and I want to mention it now, is, Jacques, you need to lap these things quite often, like some of the other stones. Yes, true. Then there's not going to be a lot left of my stone. Not true. So this stone, and if you know COTICULE, will know it's still got plenty of life in it. This thing's been lapped, I want to say, hundreds of times, 100 times at least. So it's, if you do your maintenance, lapping the stones regularly when it needs to happen, you will prolong the stone's life because you need to take small amounts of material away. So I first quickly need to put this stone down and take a break to... Okay, so we've talked about lapping, keeping the corner chamfered, and we talked briefly about dressing. So I want to move on from that. So the other thing you can do is to make a stone finer is the type of medium you use on the stone when you cut. So that can be water, it can be a slurry, it can be a oil, it can be a soaping mix, it can be talc powder. I've used that quite successfully. You can use your lather on here, and all of these things will have a different result on the stone. So those are things you need to play with. The next one I want to get in is slurry. So I'm going to move this box away because we are going to start getting things a little bit wet. And then I want to talk, we're quickly going to step through slurries. First of all is what's in the box, Jock. So some of my stones, can you guys see this? Yeah. Yes, and we'll have a look at all of them. AIIWATANI, JNAT, THURINGIAN, COTICULE, here's a jasper, and we've got some naguras, and I've got some other stones here on the side, which we'll get to shortly. So slurry. Stones have got the abrasive particles in them, and they become loose and they increase the cutting power. Synthetic stones, natural stones, they work in a similar way. Coticules slurry works different than any other stone slurry. So as an example, JNAT slurry, when we get to that, JNAT slurry breaks down, it becomes finer. Coticule really doesn't. They've got garnets. A JNAT fundamentally is silicon, and we'll cover that. So there's three prominent types of particles. It's silica oxide, which is silica or quartz or combination of it. And then there's potassium, aluminium silicate in there, and magnesium, aluminium silicate typically in JNATs. Coticules have got garnets in. It's a type of crystal. They round. They really don't break down. So they work differently. So let's quickly show you what slurry is. I'm just going to use water on here, and then I'm going to use another piece. This is exactly the same coticule. It's a piece that came off here. I'm going to use, and I'm going to gently rub this on the stone, and you will quickly see there's a white milkiness forming, and that is the slurry. Can you guys see that? Now, depending on how heavy the slurry is, it will change the characteristics of the stone and how it cuts. So a coticule, typically, if you've got a very heavy slurry, more like a paste, it will cut like a 1.5 K stone typically. And it also depends on how much pressure you use and how much slurry you have, and what type of steel it is. So quickly there, that has become a whole lot darker just by taking off of material. So because the slurry doesn't break down, you need to dilute it with water as you want to change the characteristics of it so that it cuts finer, until you only running on water or talc or one of those lathers we talked about when polishing, or just under running water when you do that. So that's slurry. So with a coticule, a slurry, as I say, can be very thick, like a paste. It can be medium, it can be very light. Those are the options you've got with a coticule. The other thing is, once you've got a bit of the garnets loose and you keep working it, those garnets will keep losing other garnets. So they will keep releasing particles without any real effort. There's something else I wanted to mention on that. Forgotten now. Maybe I'll get back to that. Very distracting when she does that. So what type of strokes do you get? You get full strokes on a stone, okay, like that, up and down. You get X strokes, where you go laterally across, diagonally across, covering the whole blade. That's the X stroke. You get a half stroke. So quickly about the half stroke, what I like about the half stroke is you can really control the pressure with it, and I believe it cuts actually a whole lot quicker than a long stroke, because in a long stroke your pressure and consistency change. These half strokes are very good for doing quick work, especially on a coticule or a J-nut with a good slurry on. The other thing, pressures. So depending on the blade. So if it's an ultra thin blade and it flexes a lot, then obviously when you apply a little bit of torque towards the edge, you can't use a lot because the blade flexes and it pushes the bevel apex away from the stone. So Iwasaki-san, and we're talking about Kamasoris or wedge type stuff that hasn't got a lot of flex in. He uses 10 kilos during bevel set, then he'll use 2 kilos as he step backs, then 200 grams roughly, and then no pressure. Those are the types of pressures he uses during the different phases of honing. So consider that. This blade is not going to take a lot of pressure, but I can tell you what I'm doing here is at least 5 or 6 kilos, and we've now got a paste on here. Okay, that's pressures. I'm currently honing on a bench, so that's one way of doing it. You can also hold the stone in your hand. I prefer this on the finishing phases. The reason for that is you have got a whole lot more control, feel. You can really manage the pressure when you're honing. So hand honing, especially under a sink with running water, is a very good way of doing the final finishing steps on that. So you can have a bridge sink over. It's all the same thing. Find that what works for you and then stick with it. So checkpoints when you hone. When do you move on from one phase to the next? So bevel setting is the first one, and if a razor's bevel set, it will take hairs effortlessly across the entire width of the blade from your arm without really any effort. They must just pop off and fly off. Then you know the bevel set correctly. Then you move on to refining the bevel and start doing the polishing. So at some point in time, while you're polishing, the razor will start tree topping. Now, what you have to understand, this razor is obviously blunt, it's an old one or not that sharp for tree topping. What you need to remember with regards to slurries is that if you've got a heavy slurry, that little particles, and this accounts for all stones, will keep hitting the apex and start working material away. So it will a lot of the sharpness will be gone. And what I want to get at is once you want to check tree topping and onwards, strop the razor, clean it and strop it so that you get rid of any loose pieces of material, and then go and tree top. When it tree tops, then you know you are 95% there. And now it's a matter of refining your technique, the medium you use on the stone or the finishing stone you use to really get it razor sharp. Then you strop again and you can do your hanging hair test if you want to verify that it's cutting hairs effortlessly hanging. And then obviously there's the shave test, which is the ultimate one to understand. And I've already got a sneaky suspicion I'll have to break this video up into 2 parts because we're talking a lot and I don't want one dragged out video. So we've briefly covered how we maintain stones, the types of medium we can use it, water, oil. So the other thing on natural stones, especially dense ones, is you can use oil on these things interchangeably with water. They are so dense that oil doesn't get into them. Okay, so it's a matter of putting a little bit of soap, wash it off, and off you go. So use mineral oil. Some people add a little bit of glycerine in water to find ways to change the surface tension of the medium they're using on the stone to make it cut finer. So those are all considerations. Let's quickly talk about convex stones. So there are people that use convex stones and they work well and you get great killer edges off them. I do not use convex stones and there's a couple of reasons for them. First of all is if you follow the people that use convex stones on a regular basis, I'll tell you, they've got different size wheels for different phases of what they're doing. So that just becomes, for me, unnecessary complex because you need to lap them and maintain them in that geometry. So a bevel setter would have a different wheel size than intermediate work, and the final polish would have a different wheel. It gives good edges. It doesn't give any better edges than using flat stones. So I've had the opportunity to use some of those convex edges from people, and they are no better than a flat edge. So it is a preference thing, what you want to do and how you want to finish your edges. So so many size wheels, you're gonna need stones on that needs to be lapped. You need to buy that dishing plate to do it. So lapping and maintenance becomes the issue. Because there's a smaller contact area on that convex hone, you're only hitting a very small bit of the blade. So you are likely at least need to do 3 times the amount of work to get an edge set than you would on a 3-inch stone. I use narrower ones, so I know I'm doing fundamentally double what I need to do on a larger stone potentially, but that gives me the area to work on, and that's a benefit of a convex stone because you can be very precise. But overall honing, it becomes a long, tedious exercise. If that's what you don't want to do, there's nothing wrong with it, and you'll be happy with the edges you get from it. So let's move on to maybe a bit of show and tell. So the first stone I want to get into is THURINGIAN, and you'll see this is even narrower than that. This is a fossilized silt stone, so it's a sedimentary stone. It is very soft. It makes really killer edges. This stone as an example, if you use slurry on it, THURINGIAN slurry on it or not, it really doesn't make any difference. It's very fine. So these stones I don't use with a slurry. You just wasting the stone away, and as I say, they are very, very soft. Let's quickly have a look under the scope to see how long are we into this video. 20 minutes. Let's quickly see what is happening here. Okay. Can we get this going? There we go. This is the surface of the THURINGIAN. Very, very even, uniform. No toxic inclusions. Very fine, very uniform. So that's this little stone. There we go. Killer edges. If you can find these etchers, they really work well. The next I want to get in is a JNAT. This is AIIWATANI. So as I say, this is fundamentally silica type based stones, and if you work slurry on them, the slurry breaks down over time. You will see the chamfered edges on here, and I use clear nail polish coating just to protect the stone bottom at the end. And I've got the hardness level, the stated hardness level, and the stone's name just on here. So if we wet this, I'm just gonna wet one area, a little bit of greenish to it and some red orange tint to it, which I think is iron oxide traces, which will obviously help cutting, in my opinion, but I can't confirm or deny what it is. What it looks like under the scope. This is on the dry side. Very dense, very uniform. It's got these little red spots in here. So this is what the AIIWATANI looks like. Let's quickly run a slurry on this. So guys, if you haven't got another stone to use as a slurry, you can either use your lapping plate or a piece of sandpaper. I don't really like that. Here's an old worn out little diamond plate, a pocket one. So you can use this to create a slurry like this, and you will see really in no time you've got this silica based slurry going. So razor again. And you will quickly see the amount of material that's coming off. So cutting speed on stones is important depending on what type of work you want to do. Okay. So that is the AIIWATANI. I use Zano Naguras on them. This is a Bowtan. So quickly on dressing as well. I use the coarser stones to dress some of my softer stones like this AIIWATANI. So that's Bowtan, very light rubbing, very quickly there's a slurry on. In stark contradiction, I quickly want to show you, this is my black Arkansas. If I rub this on here to try and create a slurry, that kind of slurry we had on the JNAT, it's going to take me a very long time. This is because this side is very polished, highly polished, and not abrasive, so it's dressed very fine. The back end of the stone I redressed with 200 grit silicon carbide. I'll show you guys a bit later. It's wet now, but it's got a very matte finish to it. Because the way it's dressed, it's quite coarse. But check this. Same stone, same pressure, same everything. There's a slurry. Because this side is dressed differently than the other side. Okay, so another example of how stones are dressed. I want to quickly rinse this one down and let it sit to the side to dry, and then I can just show you what the other side looks like. So with 25 minutes in here, I want to show you the hone I use in the kitchen. Where is it? Oh, yeah. Arkansas. This is a soft Arkansas, a thicker stone. I really like this for kitchen knives. It really cuts fast. Let's quickly show you. So I'm going to use something else. This is stainless steel, whereas that razor is carbon steel. This is using the stone without any slurry, just as is with water. And I'm cutting my glove here if I'm not careful. And you will already see the black swarf on there. So another Arkansas, very hard. If you look at this thing under the microscope, you'll see it is quite porous. You see this? Here's a polished side. My hands are wet. Let me quickly take this off. I want to show you the set I use to do kitchen knives. If you've haven't seen my other introductory to Whetstone and the basics you need, I talk about my travel kit for doing knives. So this is a brand new DMT. It's a backup for this one. I only received it previously. This one was in here. So that's to do any heavy lifting. DMT 325. And this side is a Belgian blue from Vein 8. This actually separated from this coticule. Where's my... This is what this stone looked like. It had a fracture here, so I had to cut this piece off to save the stone. But before that, this is a natural combination stone. It split. It came off very nicely. So this is the backing from it. This is essentially about 4K, but when I do the next video about the coticles, I'll show you guys and talk about them. This matte finish is what we've got on the back of this. Wonder if I quickly wipe this down, if you'll get an idea. It's also very dense stone, so you just blow on it. So this you can see is the polished side, yeah. And then this side, let's just wipe off the water and give it a bit of a blow. This is how dense these stones are. The water will just evaporate off. Nothing gets absorbed in. You see this matte sandblast finished. This is the 220 versus the polished side. You guys can see the difference. And a great example of lapping. Differences in lapping. So if you want to do some more heavy lifting work here, maybe with a Bauta or Nagura, then you can use this side, and then when you start doing your final polishing, you switch the side. These stones are as hard as hell. So if you've ever tried lapping Arkansas, you would know that. So the best way of doing it is with silicon carbide. This is the 220 I used on these stones, and then the polishing side a long time ago on the 800. But once you've got it flat, these Naguras will just keep them polished. The other reason why you should have something like a roughish bolt-on, in my opinion, is you want to keep the stone, the carbides that's in there that does the cutting, the particles, you want to keep crisp and clean. And also remove any swarf out of the stone. So a slurry stone is a nice way of doing that. And also a coarse one is, it keeps just taking off a fraction. On these stones it really doesn't matter, but on a softer stone it will keep taking off and keeping the particles in the stone sharp. It cuts over them. They don't become round and dull. I know for finishing, a lot of the guys in Arkansas run chisels on them at a very high pressure to knock off any high spots. If you want to end up with a finishing surface like that, that's really got no cutting capability, then yes. But on these sides where you want to still do a bit of work, you want the surfaces to be fresh and clean, and so a stone like this, even dry, look at this. Not the same thing. So ideas about increasing the value out of a stone. So pre-finisher, finisher for me, and I can run whatever I want on here, Naguras. In the next video, we'll dive deep into coticles and speak about them, because that is fundamentally my base stone for 90% of the work. Thank you for your time. See you in the next one.